What do you do when your boss always thinks they are right? You bring up a concern and they hear criticism. You suggest another approach and suddenly you are being difficult. A decision goes wrong, but somehow the conversation becomes about what you should have done differently. Over time, you may start questioning yourself, staying quiet in meetings, or carefully choosing every word just to avoid another defensive reaction. But constantly managing your boss's ego can drain your energy and make it harder to do your actual job. You may not be able to change a boss who refuses to admit mistakes, but you can change how you respond, protect your confidence, and keep their defensiveness from controlling your workday. Working with a boss who always thinks they are right can make even ordinary workplace conversations feel stressful. You may have useful information, a legitimate concern, or a better solution, but bringing it up can feel risky when your manager treats disagreement as a challenge to their authority. Eventually, you may start editing yourself before you speak, avoiding difficult conversations, or wondering whether your own judgment can still be trusted. The problem is that constantly trying to prove your boss wrong usually does not solve anything. In many cases, it only increases defensiveness and makes communication more difficult. What you need instead is a way to stay calm, communicate clearly, and protect yourself professionally without turning every disagreement into a confrontation. In this video, we'll look at practical ways to deal with a difficult or defensive boss who rarely admits mistakes. You'll learn why staying close to facts can make conversations more productive, how strategic questions can reduce defensiveness, why documenting decisions can protect you when directions change, and how to reset mentally after tense interactions. The goal is not to win every argument with your manager. It is to keep your thinking clear, protect your professional reputation, and prevent someone else's certainty from becoming your self-doubt. How to stay calm when your boss always thinks they are right. Working with a boss who never thinks they are wrong can make even simple work feel heavier than it should. A normal update becomes a test. A small correction becomes a risk. A meeting that should be about solving a problem turns into a performance where one person must protect their authority at all costs. The hardest part is not always the decision your boss makes. It is the emotional atmosphere around the decision. When a manager cannot admit mistakes, the team learns to move carefully. People soften their words, hide concerns, avoid disagreement, and spend more energy managing the boss's reaction than improving the work. Over time, this can make you question yourself even when you are acting professionally. The goal is not to fix your boss's personality. That is usually not within your control. The goal is to protect your clarity, communicate in ways that lower defensiveness, and keep enough emotional distance so their certainty does not become your confusion. Why an always right boss feels so exhausting. A boss who always thinks they are right often turns ordinary feedback into a threat. If you ask a question, they may hear criticism. If you offer another option, they may treat it like resistance. If a plan fails, they may look for someone else to blame rather than examine the decision honestly. That creates a strange working environment. You may start editing yourself before you speak. You may avoid raising useful concerns because you do not want to trigger defensiveness. You may even begin wondering whether you are the problem, especially if your boss presents every disagreement as proof that you do not understand the situation. This is why naming the pattern matters. When you can recognize the always right behavior, you stop treating every difficult moment as a personal verdict. You begin to see it as a pattern of leadership defensiveness, not evidence that your instincts are wrong. Stay close to facts, not feelings. When your boss is defensive, emotional arguments usually make things worse. Even if your feelings are valid, leading with frustration gives them something to push against. Facts are harder to dismiss. Instead of saying, "This keeps changing and it is stressing everyone out," you might say, "The timeline has changed 3 times this week. To meet Friday's deadline, we need to confirm which version is final today." That sentence keeps the focus on work, not emotion. Facts give the conversation structure. They reduce the chance of being pulled into a debate about attitude, loyalty, or tone. They also help protect your reputation because you are showing that your concern is tied to outcomes, deadlines, and clarity. Use questions that lower defensiveness. Direct correction can trigger an always right boss quickly. That does not mean you should stay silent. It means your phrasing matters. Questions often work better than blunt disagreement because they allow your boss to think without feeling publicly corrected. Instead of saying, "That approach will not work," you might ask, "What outcome are we prioritizing if the timeline becomes tight?" Instead of saying, "You changed the direction again," you might ask, "Should I treat this as the final direction before I update the file?" Useful questions include: what outcome matters most here? Which priority should move if we take this on? Do you want a quick version now or a stronger version tomorrow? Should I document this as the final decision? What would make this successful from your view? These questions keep the conversation practical. They also make trade-offs visible without forcing your boss to admit they may have been unclear. Protect your headspace after tense moments. A difficult boss can take up mental space long after the meeting ends. You may replay what they said, wonder if you sounded wrong, or rehearse better responses you wish you had used. That replay is understandable, but it can steal energy from the rest of your day. After a tense exchange, take a few minutes to reset. Write down what actually happened in neutral facts. What was said? What was decided? What is your next step? This keeps your mind from turning the moment into a story about your worth. A simple internal line can help: "This is their defensiveness, not my identity." You are not trying to excuse bad behavior. You are reminding yourself not to absorb it as proof that you failed. Document decisions calmly. When a boss rewrites history or changes direction often, documentation becomes a professional safety tool. It does not need to sound suspicious. A short follow-up message can protect everyone. You might write, "To confirm our conversation, I'll revise the proposal using option B and send the updated version by Thursday." This creates a clear record without sounding accusatory. The key is to document decisions before confusion becomes blame. Keep it short, factual, and tied to next steps. Over time, these records help you stay grounded and reduce the emotional burden of remembering everything alone. Working with a boss who always thinks they are right requires more than patience. It requires calm communication, factual records, and emotional distance. You do not need to win every disagreement. You need to protect your ability to think clearly and do good work. You may not be able to make your boss more self-aware, but you can become more strategic in how you respond. Stay close to facts. Ask useful questions. Document decisions. Reset after tense moments. The more steady you become, the less their certainty controls your confidence. You may not be able to make an always right boss more self-aware, but you can become more strategic about how you respond. Stay close to facts instead of getting pulled into emotional arguments. Ask questions that make priorities and trade-offs clear. Document important decisions before confusion turns into blame. And after a tense interaction, separate your boss's defensiveness from your own sense of competence. You do not need to win every disagreement. You need to protect your ability to think clearly, communicate professionally, and continue doing good work. If you work with someone whose defensiveness makes every disagreement harder than it needs to be, share this video with someone who might be dealing with the same situation. And if you want more practical strategies for handling difficult bosses, workplace communication, boundaries, and challenging professional relationships, like this video and subscribe to the channel for more.